Whether you're looking for answers to specific life questions or seeking to become the best version of you possible, welcome to the Mental Breakdown and Psychreg podcast, where we offer insight, information, and strategies based upon research and years of practice as clinical psychologists. So sit back, have a listen, and get connected with our hosts, Dr. Berney Wilkinson and Dr. Richard Marshall. Welcome back. Richard, today we're going to review an article from another one of those sites that I've never heard of, never been to, but it has a very interesting article. And this is from ranker.com.
Right.
And there's so many different ways to think about the word rancor.
Exactly.
But the title of this article is How a Single Discredited Essay is the Basis of the Idiotic Anti-Vaccine Movement.
The title suggesting that... So the title tells you where this is headed.
Right. We would say that this author is slightly biased from the beginning.
And this comes in the section under Weird History.
Yeah.
So, the idiotic anti-vaccine movement.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, those you have all heard, I'm sure, that there is I guess we would call it a movement. I don't know what else we would call it, of individuals who believe that and sort of proclaim that vaccinations cause autism, cause ADHD, cause all kinds of different physical, mental, developmental, emotional problems down the line. And a lot of this...
No, it's so... what alarms me about this, two things. First of all, these vaccinations, the one in question, was to prevent the outbreak of measles, mumps, and rubella.
Right, MMR.
Okay? These are not pleasant diseases for anybody to get, and you can die from these. Okay.
Yeah.
The second is this problem is very much with us. A woman was put in jail last week in California because she refused to allow her son to be vaccinated.
Well, I didn't hear about that.
And so this is a problem that refuses to go away, and people are still struggling with it. And the sad part of it is that the research on which this is based is known to be flawed.
Right.
It has been shown over and over and over and over that the research on which this argument is based has been shown to be dishonest, inaccurate, and flawed. Now,
what is fascinating about this is the speed at which it took off. Mm-hmm. So there's I think it's from the UK. This gastroenterologist, Andrew Wakefield, who wrote a paper along with some co-authors, 12 co-authors.
12 co-authors.
Wrote an article that basically said that children who are vaccinated have an increased risk of developing autism.
Right.
And autism spectrum disorders.
Which came, it's interesting because if you trace, the interesting thing about this article is it traces the chronology of his work. It begins in 1993. Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Right? And it goes all the way back to 1993 where he began to make this connection between that and the vaccinations and Crohn's, the development of Crohn's disease. That makes sense. He's a gastroenterologist.
Right.
Okay. So he's saying, wow, I wonder if there's some connection. It proved that there was no connection. That he found that, in fact, there is no connection.
Right.
But then in 1995, a mother came to him with her son, who has autism, and there seemed to be, she believed that there was some, I want to say, temporal association. That is that sometime around the time that the child was vaccinated, he seemed to develop these symptoms.
Right.
Okay, and so then Wakefield went from the link to Crohn's to a link to autism. That was in 1998.
Right. Yeah. So he wrote this paper, and there's two fascinating things that came from this. First is they wrote this paper and got it published in The Lancet.
Right.
The Lancet, for those of you who don't know, is a very prestigious, respected
Highly
journal.
respected.
I mean, you only get published in the Lancet if you have pretty solid information, solid research. I only of the researchers that I've worked with, I only know of a few who had ever been published in the Lancet.
It's one of the oldest medical journals
Right.
in the world. I mean, it's been around for at least 100 years.
Right.
Right.
So they published this paper in the Lancet, which gave it a lot of traction
Gave it credibility.
immediately.
Right.
What is the second part that's fascinating about this is that, in terms of medical research, the incredible speed at which his claims were completely disproven.
Right.
Within a year, there were other papers published that disproved what he said.
That's right. Because had this discovery, had this discovery between vaccinations and autism been made, it would have been a huge breakthrough.
Right.
Would have been a major
Right.
discovery. Okay. Because we're still 20 years out.
Right.
We're still trying to figure out
Yeah.
what autism is. So this would have been an enormous discovery. In fact, they called it autistic enterocolitis. They
Right.
even had a name for it. But the problem is, they had 12 children in the study, and 11 were males. And in scientific research, one of the things we want to do is to replicate other
Right.
people's. If we all do the study,
Yeah.
we should all get the same results.
Right.
Other people did the study, and nobody could replicate his results, which
Right.
is the first indication that something's wrong somewhere.
Yeah.
We all should be able to get the same findings. Okay, so that was the first indication that something was wrong.
Right.
And as it turned out, something was very wrong
Right.
with this study.
Well, yeah. I mean, what we later learned is that
Right.
he lied.
Number
Basically,
one.
the result he manipulated the data
Right.
to get the results he was looking for.
That's right. Because in the same year that the study was published, all of it, there was already studies coming out to say no, the data are flawed. However, what Wakefield did, because Wakefield is also a self-promoter,
Right.
in the same year he held a press conference claiming that there was an association, and it was that press conference that gave this the legs that he needed to spread this false claim. It was the press conference, not the research. And what people began to express concerns about is that in order to do this study, he had to do a colonoscopy on very young children,
Right.
and they had to do lumbar punctures, spinal taps on very young children. These are very painful, invasive, and could be dangerous procedures.
Right.
And ethically, our ethics prevent us from doing those kinds of procedures unless they're medically necessary.
Right.
You can't simply take spinal fluid out of a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old to do your research project.
Right.
It's unethical here and in the UK.
Right.
And so the other issue was he was using procedures that were at least questionable and possibly unsafe.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
By 2001, he had lost his job.
Right.
So
So again, 98 the paper was published. He went on this media blitz to spread the word. By 99, there were already studies out that said that it's disproven.
that's right.
By 2001, he was barred from practicing medicine.
right.
He lost his license and is no longer allowed to practice medicine.
Right. Well, he lost his license a little bit later, but he lost his job in 01.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But from the perspective of medical research and the field, that's fast. That's very quick for those things to happen. But the damage was already done.
People in the field, people in his profession were already expressing concerns a year later.
Right.
I mean, it was already being debunked a year later. Then it gets worse.
Yeah.
Because in 2004, an investigative reporter by the name of Brian Deere began to look into this, and he found that Wakefield had accepted, and the figure they give is 400,000 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
It's what, 700?
That's almost $1 million.
$700 something. Mm-hmm.
Right. It's almost so. He found that Dr. Wakefield was given 400,000 pounds by a group of attorneys who were preparing a lawsuit against the manufacturers of the MMR vaccine.
Right.
So now you have a second ethical violation because he was receiving large amounts of money to conduct research. Yeah. And that, we believe, is what caused a later problem, because in 2005, one of his graduate students who was working on the project said that any data that didn't support his claim was thrown out. Right. Okay. So that's a third ethical violation. Right. All right. So it continues to compound. So even though it was discredited by 1999 and 2001 and 2004 and 2005, this thing refuses to die. Right. Okay.
It keeps getting picked up by new people. So we have movie stars, and we have people who aren't doing the research, but they are talking about and just keeping it alive. They just keep it going.
That's right.
And there have been very strong, good research studies that have, without a doubt, disproven the claims.
Right. And that was in 2005, the same year that the graduate student said he didn't include all the data. Right. He only included the data. But there's a lot of money at stake here to get the results that he wanted. So he manipulated the data. Also in 2005, once again, the medical community said, let's once and for all, let's study this issue. So there was another large study, and it showed that indeed Wakefield's hypothesis that there's some link between the vaccine and autism was negated. No, there is no connection. Right. Okay, so that's 2005. However, in 2007, Jenny McCarthy comes along, this celebrity, and she links her star to Wakefield. Right. And so they, once again, breathing new life into this notion that there's some connection between between the vaccine and autism. Yeah. So even though the scientific community says there is no link, it won't go away. Right. So now we're up to 2007. By 2010, Wakefield loses his license. Finally, he's banned from practicing medicine anywhere. So he moves to the United States. Okay, now he's here, and he has this following. And then, in 2016, he makes a movie called Vaxxed, V-A-X-X-E-D, from
Cover Up to Catastrophe.
Cover Up to Catastrophe, right. And so this thing refuses to go away. There's some mythical character that you can't kill. You probably know who it is. No matter how you try to kill it, it won't die. The Mummy or something like that. You don't know what I'm talking about.
I don't.
You don't watch enough movies.
That's true.
So, but this thing refuses to die. And in the meantime, we have children who are now getting these diseases because their parents don't want them to be vaccinated. And so now children are getting these diseases, and they're dying from preventable diseases. Right. So there are implications here. And the other thing is, and I forget the word that they use, it's called this herd mentality, where children are, if your child is not vaccinated, you expose the entire class to these diseases. Right. Okay, and there's some term that they use. And that's another problem. So on the one hand, you have thousands of children getting sick and dying from preventable diseases. Right. And on the other hand, you have these unvaccinated children exposing people to these diseases that they should never be exposed to. Right. And so there are significant implications to not vaccinating your children. Yeah. You have to protect your kids. Right. And these are not pleasant diseases. They're there's a whooping cough. We don't see children dying of whooping cough anymore. It's a horrible, horrible death. Right. And it's preventable.
Right.
So you have to protect your children from these diseases.
Yeah. There's a great podcast by Science. It's from Gimlet Media. It's Science Versus, and they did 2 episodes on vaccines, and she did a really good job of going through the history. She talks a lot about Wakefield, but she also talks about other myths about vaccines. Related to some people feel like or believe that vaccines can make their induce seizures in their child, and there is a very slight risk that a child might have 1 seizure, but research has shown that it has no long-term consequences, and so it's a really good set of podcasts where they really kind of go through it. But we found this article, and it's just, again, it's just really important to step back and look at what's going on. Don't just listen to the hype. Don't just listen to the thing that they're telling you on TV.
The propaganda.
Right.
I mean, this is a propaganda film. Wakefield's movie is a propaganda film.
Right.
When you think about these days of fake news.
Right.
Okay, we hear about fake news. Think about this for a minute. Wakefield did a study on 12 individuals, okay, in 1998. Since then, we have vaccinated tens of millions of children. We have done dozens of studies with hundreds of subjects, and all of this says
thousands of subjects in some cases.
Right.
In some countries, they've done thousands of studies.
Thousands and thousands of participants. And think about what's happening here. We're taking this debunked study that was paid for,
right,
of 12 kids, 8 of whom, so of the 12, only 8 showed any symptoms. So there's 8 kids here.
Showed any symptoms, though we're not even really sure how many symptoms they really showed, because we know that he manipulated the data.
That's right. So even though he was manipulating the data, he still only found it in 8.
Right.
And you're going to compare. You're going to say, "Well, I'm going to put my money there. I think that's the truth."
Yeah.
No, the truth is over here. It's overwhelming.
Right.
And then you have this other issue of why would you expose a child to these diseases when it's unnecessary, and children are getting sick, and they don't need to. There was another article this morning about the Gates Foundation has been very active in trying to eradicate polio, and they believe that they're very close to eradicating it through vaccination. So we could get rid of this horrible. There is a little polio still occurring in the United States, but that disease has just about been eradicated through vaccination.
Right.
So, be careful.
Just
be careful what you do with all this information.
Look at all the information.
The data's it's so overwhelming.
Right.
On one side compared to 8 kids with flawed data.
I vaccinated all my kids.
I did too, and my brother was living in California at the time, and he called and said, "What about?" Because it was about that time, and I said, "No, get your kids vaccinated."
Yeah. Absolutely.
You got to protect them against those diseases.
Absolutely. So, all right. Let us know if you have any questions about any of that. But definitely check out the article. The link is in the show notes. So check that out. All right. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.